Let me ask you something. What would you do if your own family expected you to clean up a mess you didn't even make, just because you're the responsible one? And what if, when you finally said no, the person you trusted most, the person who raised you, stood up and lunged at you like you were the villain? If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more of the best Reddit stories every week. You won't believe how this one ends. It started with a dinner I never wanted to attend. Sunday night. The whole family was gathered at the table. My parents, my older sister Claire, and me. Roast chicken, wine, that fake polite silence that always hangs in the air before someone drops a bomb. That someone this time was me. I had brought a printout. A credit card statement in my name, one I didn't open. Charges I never made. A balance I never knew existed. Thousands of dollars racked up over months. Fancy boutiques, spa treatments, a weekend resort in Miami. I laid it gently on the table and said, "Who opened a credit card using my name?" My dad's fork clanged against his plate. My mom's face drained of color. Claire looked down like suddenly her potatoes were fascinating. No one answered. So I asked again, this time louder. And then it happened. My father slammed his fist on the table so hard his wine glass toppled. He stood up, red-faced, and shouted, "Don't you dare accuse your sister at this table. She's been through enough. You think waving some paper around gives you the right to act like a victim?" I said quietly, "I am the victim. This card was opened under my name. You've always been selfish." He snapped. "You earn the most, and you act like that gives you power over this family." He started toward me, his hand still shaking from rage, and for a second, I thought he might actually hit me. In that moment, the room didn't feel like home. It felt like a courtroom where I'd already been found guilty. Of what, I wasn't sure. Maybe of not staying silent. Maybe of not swallowing one more betrayal. I looked at all of them. My mom couldn't meet my eyes. Claire kept her head down, pretending she was somewhere else. And my dad, he didn't see me as his daughter anymore. Just an obstacle. A threat. And the worst part? No one defended me. That's when it hit me. They didn't just want my help. They expected my sacrifice. After that dinner, I drove home in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary, my mind screaming in 1,000 different directions. It wasn't just the statement, or the lies, or even the violence simmering in my father's voice. It was the way they looked at me. Like I was the one who had broken something. Like I had somehow disrupted the family by uncovering a truth that was never mine to hide in the first place. When I got home, I tossed the printout onto my kitchen table and stared at it again. Each transaction burned like a personal insult. Boutique names I'd never set foot in. A massage parlor in a resort town I'd never visited. Luxury cosmetics, designer shoes, late-night food delivery, even tickets to some influencer event in LA. It was all so clearly Claire's world. I could hear her voice in every purchase, fancy, entitled, out of touch. And yet it was my name on the top of that statement. My credit score was the one getting trashed. My financial history poisoned. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my credit report. That was when the full horror sank in. The card had been opened almost a year ago. And she hadn't just spent wildly, she had missed payments. Skipped minimums. Let interest pile up. All under my identity. How? The question wouldn't leave me alone. How did she get past the verification? But the answer was obvious. Claire knew me. She had my social security number. We had shared an apartment briefly in college, and I'd been naive enough to leave documents around. She had my full name, my birth date. It wouldn't have been hard. A few clicks online, maybe a forged signature, and boom, I was the proud owner of a luxury lifestyle I'd never seen. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I went to the bank to file a fraud claim. I brought documents. I brought screenshots. But when they asked, "Was this someone you know?" I hesitated. That moment of hesitation would haunt me for days. Because if I said yes, if I named Claire, it wouldn't just be a fraud case. it would be a felony charge. It would be my sister, possibly in handcuffs. And despite everything, some twisted part of me still wanted to believe this wasn't what it looked like. That maybe she made a mistake. That maybe if I confronted her directly, she'd explain. Apologize. Make it right. So I called her. She didn't answer. I texted her. She replied, "You're being dramatic. Dad's right. You're acting like a victim over a few $1,000s. Chill." That was it. No apology. No denial. Just dismissal. Just entitlement. It wasn't the words that broke me, it was the tone. Like I owed her. Like I was the crazy one for caring. That's when the memory started unraveling. Claire, 2 years ago, crying in my apartment because her boyfriend had cleaned out her account. Me, covering her rent. The time I bought her a car so she could get to her new job. All the times I thought I was helping, supporting, being a good sibling. But now I saw it. I hadn't been helping. I'd been enabling. I drove to my parents' house that evening, hoping to at least get some form of acknowledgement. I wanted my dad to say he overreacted. My mom to say she believed me. But the second I stepped inside, the chill hit me like a wave. My mother didn't even look up from her crossword. My dad crossed his arms and said, "Are you here to apologize?" Apologize? I blinked. For what? Being stolen from? He scoffed. You made a scene. You humiliated Claire. She's your sister. No, I said, my voice shaking. She's a thief. She needed help. You've always had more. You don't understand what it's like to struggle. That's when I realized this wasn't about debt. This wasn't about money. This was about control. About obligation. About how I'd been cast in the family narrative as the provider. The stable one. The one they could lean on, drain dry, and expect silence from. Struggling doesn't give someone the right to destroy someone else's future, I said. And I'm done playing the role you wrote for me. My mom finally looked up. Honey, she's going through a hard time. Can't you just let this go? No, I said simply. I'm filing a full report. My father's jaw tightened. You'll destroy this family? No, I replied. Claire already did. I'm just cleaning up the mess. They didn't stop me when I left. They didn't call the next day. Or the next. I waited, because some part of me still hoped they'd come around. But they didn't. Instead, I got an email from Claire. A sarcastic, smug email. Guess I shouldn't have trusted family. Thanks for the betrayal. Hope your credit score's worth it. I laughed out loud when I read it. She felt betrayed. She thought this was about loyalty. No. This was about dignity. I spent the rest of the week documenting everything. Dates, amounts, emails, texts, screenshots. I filed a police report for identity theft. I contacted a lawyer. I filed a full fraud complaint with the credit bureau. It wasn't easy. It was painful. It felt like I was cutting ties to a past I had clung to for too long. But I did it. And I didn't tell them. I let them sit in silence. I let them believe I might come back, that I might cave. But I didn't. Days passed. Then weeks. Then Claire lost her job. Apparently, her employer found out about her pending fraud investigation when the bank contacted them. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. But the real fracture wasn't Claire. It was my parents. Because in choosing to protect her, they lost me. And I think they finally realized that. 3 weeks after filing the report, I got a letter from my father. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. It was a demand. A demand to drop the charges. 2. Think about the family's reputation. 2. Not drag us through court. He still didn't get it. This wasn't about shame. It was about truth. And the truth was, they never saw me as a daughter. Just a resource. A silent investor in the family's chaos. By the time I received that letter from my father, full of arrogant entitlement, no trace of remorse. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even disappointed. I was clear. Crystal clear. They weren't trying to protect Claire anymore. They were trying to preserve the illusion that they'd never made a mistake. That their golden child had never done anything wrong. That their loyal daughter, the one who had paid, sacrificed, stayed quiet, had suddenly become the threat because she stopped being useful. So I leaned in. If they were going to paint me as the villain, then fine. I'd wear the cloak. But I wasn't going to lash out or scream or destroy. No. I was going to do what they never saw coming. I was going to document everything. I met with a lawyer, Samantha Ng, someone a colleague had recommended. She had this calm, piercing energy. She listened as I explained the situation, the identity theft, the fake credit card, the family pressure, the threats. She asked for every piece of evidence I had. I have screenshots of Claire admitting it was her, I told her. Text emails. I also have access logs from my credit report showing when the account was opened and which devices logged in. She leaned forward. Do you have any recordings? Yes, I said. Audio. From a conversation where she admits she only used it for a few things and that I shouldn't make a big deal out of it. She nodded. That'll do. We can file for full restitution and formally request the credit bureau initiate a removal under verified identity fraud. If she contests, we go to court. And if she doesn't? I asked. She'll have to pay, Samantha said. And depending on how far we take it, she could face felony charges. But that's your call. I looked down at the table. I wasn't vengeful. I wasn't even hoping for jail time. But I wanted the truth. And I wanted it on record. We began by filing a formal dispute with the credit bureau. Then, using the Fair Credit Reporting Act, we requested a block on all negative items associated with the fraudulent card. The bank responded. They launched an investigation, separate from my family's narrative, their gaslighting, their guilt trips. This was now fact-based. Law-based. Claire didn't respond to the bank's inquiries. So, the bank escalated. Within 3 weeks, the balance was removed from my name. My credit score began to repair itself. I was given a letter confirming that the account had been opened under false pretenses. And just like that, the story they had tried to bury came bubbling up, with documentation, with authority. But I didn't stop there. I sent a letter, professionally worded, legally reviewed, to both my parents. I attached the bank's decision, the audio transcript, and a brief message. I'm not asking for your support anymore. I'm only informing you of the facts. Claire committed fraud. You knew. You tried to silence me. I've fixed the damage. I will not return to that house. I will not be guilted into silence. We are done. They didn't respond. But the silence was different this time. Not defiance. Fear. Weeks later, I got a call, from my mother. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice cracked midway through. We didn't know what she'd done. We thought you were overreacting. Your father, he's not well. Please just call me. Let's talk. It was too late for talk. Because they weren't sorry for what happened. They were sorry they'd lost control. Around that time, Claire's world started to unravel. The investigation triggered a fraud alert across all her accounts. Apparently, she had opened other cards under different aliases, some of them dangerously close to former friends and even coworkers' names. I wasn't the first. I was just the first who refused to be quiet. Her employer found out. She was asked to resign. A few months later, her name appeared in a local legal newsletter. I didn't seek it out. Someone forwarded it to me. Charges pending. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Misuse of federal information. Her mugshot wasn't angry. It was confused, like the consequences had finally caught up and she had no idea how. And I wish I could say I felt triumphant. But the truth? I felt nothing. Just a quiet relief that I hadn't lost my mind. That what I knew had happened did happen. That all their gaslighting, all their accusations of selfishness, were just a smokescreen to protect the golden narrative of their perfect daughter. But reality doesn't bend to fairy tales. It just waits. I remember one moment vividly, a memory that's lodged in my brain like a shard of glass. I was 9. Claire had stolen money from my birthday card, $40, tucked inside a note from our grandmother. I cried. My dad yelled at me. Told me I must have misplaced it. Claire stood in the hallway, arms crossed, victorious. That was the moment it started. Not the stealing. The rewriting. The expectation that I would always absorb the damage so the family image could remain intact. But not anymore. Samantha helped me draft a personal financial security plan. I froze my credit. I placed two-factor authentication on every sensitive account. I changed my legal address to a private mailbox. I even created a secure digital vault with backups of every interaction related to Claire's fraud. Because now, I knew the game. Now I knew what silence cost. Then came the final blow. I got a letter in the mail. It was from Claire. Handwritten. No return address. Just a small card tucked inside a crumpled envelope. Inside it said, I didn't think you'd take it this far. I thought you loved me. You've ruined my life. I hope you're happy. I folded the card. Put it in a drawer. Not out of sentimentality. Out of caution. Because her idea of love was built entirely on what she could extract. And when I stopped bleeding for her, I became the villain in her fairy tale. Let her tell that version. But mine's written in court records, legal clearances, and restored credit. Mine has receipts. Mine has timestamps. Mine is the truth. And in the end, when you strip away the manipulation, the theatrics, the gaslight and guilt, there's only one version of the story that matters. The one with evidence. It's been 9 months since the last time I heard Claire's voice. The silence should have felt cold, maybe even lonely. But instead, it felt like a clean slate. Like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know was suffocating me. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for the next apology that never came, the next manipulation disguised as a favor, or the next financial mess they expected me to clean up. I was just living. The legal process continued on its own after that. Claire was formally charged, but she cut a deal, pleaded guilty to lesser fraud charges in exchange for restitution and probation. The judge made her pay back the full amount she'd stolen from me. The money came in a single check delivered through the court system. I didn't cash it. Not because I didn't need it. But because some debts don't get paid off with a dollar amount. Some debts leave bruises under your skin. They drain your trust, your dignity, your peace of mind. No amount on a check could ever cover that. So I framed it. Put it on the wall of my home office, right next to the letter from the bank that cleared my credit record. I call it my silent testimony. Proof that I was never crazy. That I was never selfish. That I was never the villain they tried to make me out to be. I moved into a new place last spring. A quiet townhouse outside the city. No shared walls. No footsteps above my head. No echoes of raised voices in the hallway. Just space, and sunlight, and the sound of my own thoughts, finally unclouded by guilt. My parents never reached out again, not directly. But I heard from a cousin that my father had taken the whole situation very hard. That he blamed himself for the family falling apart. I laughed when I heard that. Not because it was funny, but because it was the closest thing to self-awareness he'd probably ever express. Maybe deep down, he knew what he'd done, what he'd refused to do. How he had chosen silence and denial over justice and truth. How he had raised a daughter who stole from her own family, and another daughter who was expected to absorb it without question. I didn't respond. I didn't show up to family gatherings. I didn't send cards at Christmas. I didn't answer when my mother's name popped up on my phone months later. That number is now blocked. Because healing, for me, meant drawing a line. A real one. One that didn't bend just because the people on the other side called themselves Family. Blood might tie us together, but it doesn't give anyone the right to cut me open every time they bleed. The last piece of closure came unexpectedly. One day, while I was waiting in line at a grocery store, I saw her, Claire. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but emotionally. The usual shine was gone. She didn't wear her usual makeup. She didn't have that performative energy she always carried like a weapon. She looked like someone who was still waking up from the world she had created, still reeling from the crash of her own choices. She didn't see me at first. But when she did, her face froze. And in that split second, I thought she might come over. That she might try to say something, plead, attack, lie. But she didn't. She turned around and walked away. I didn't follow her. I didn't need anything from her anymore. I already had the only thing I'd ever really wanted: peace. Not revenge. Not justice in the theatrical sense. Just peace. Peace from the mental gymnastics I'd done for years trying to justify their behavior. Peace from the stories I told myself. Maybe they don't mean it. Maybe they'll change. Maybe they love me in their own way. Peace from the toxic belief that love always requires sacrifice. It doesn't. Love, real love, doesn't demand your silence. It doesn't hand you a shovel and ask you to bury yourself for someone else's mistakes. It doesn't call you selfish when you finally choose to breathe. So now, I breathe freely. My world is quiet, and it is mine. And if they ever wonder why I never came back, the answer is simple. I finally realized I was never meant to. When people talk about betrayal, they usually picture something dramatic: cheating spouses, backstabbing friends, grand lies unraveled in public. But sometimes betrayal comes in a far more subtle, insidious form. It comes wearing the face of your family. It speaks in soft guilt instead of loud accusation. And it doesn't stab you in the back. It asks you to hand over the knife and pretend it was your idea. This story didn't begin when my sister stole from me. It didn't even begin when my father screamed across the dinner table. It began long before that, in 100 small moments where I was taught that being good meant being quiet. That love meant sacrifice. That family meant never saying no, even when saying yes meant losing yourself. And for a long time, I believed that. I believed that my success was something to be shared until it was scraped down to nothing. That my role in the family was to be the safety net, soft, invisible, expected. That being responsible meant solving everyone else's problems before they even became mine. What I've learned is this: boundaries are not betrayals. Saying no is not cruelty. Refusing to bleed for people who won't even acknowledge the wound they caused is not selfishness, it's survival. There's a strange, unspoken rule in many families. The person who has more money, more stability, more self-control, is expected to give endlessly to those who have less, without ever asking why. But that logic assumes something dangerous: that the person who is generous will never run out. That the person who gives is obligated to keep giving, even as it destroys them. That kind of love isn't noble. It's toxic. And when I finally said no, when I refused to pay for a debt I didn't create, to carry a lie I didn't tell, it didn't just cause a rift. It revealed the truth. That my worth to them had been transactional all along. That their affection was conditional. That the moment I stopped being useful, I became the enemy. And that's the hardest truth I've had to accept. Sometimes, the people who raise you aren't the people who love you best. Sometimes, love is confused with control. And guilt is used as currency. But you get to decide the value of your peace. You get to say, no more. You get to draw a line and say, I don't care if we share blood. You don't get to hurt me just because you can call me family. Healing is hard. Not because it requires forgetting, but because it demands remembering, with clarity. It means going back through every moment where you swallowed your pain for the sake of peace, and asking, was that peace even real? Or just the absence of conflict at my expense? And when you find the answer, when you realize that your silence was mistaken for agreement, that your help was treated like an obligation, that your compassion was used as a cover for manipulation, you start to understand what real self-respect looks like. It looks like stepping away. It looks like choosing peace, even if it means being alone. It looks like understanding that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. You can forgive someone and still never let them back in. Because forgiveness is about you, not them. It's the act of letting go of the weight they tried to place on your back, and choosing not to carry it any further. If I could go back and speak to the version of myself sitting at that dinner table, trembling under the weight of my father's rage, I would whisper this. You are not selfish. You are not unloving. You are not wrong. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to choose truth over loyalty. And the people who love you right will never ask you to sacrifice your dignity for their comfort. To anyone reading this, anyone who's ever been called heartless for having boundaries, anyone who's ever been told they owe someone just because they share a last name, anyone who's been made to feel like they don't belong in their own family just because they finally said enough, know this. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. What's broken is the system that taught you your pain doesn't matter. The belief that love should cost you everything. The idea that family means you must keep bleeding just to prove your loyalty. Real love isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by how much you're respected when you stop. So, let them call you cold. Let them call you selfish. Let them rewrite the story however they need to sleep at night. Because you know the truth. And the truth is the first step to freedom.